His breath was still on her collarbone, sheets tangled, skin warm, silence louder than any vow. She should have felt regret. Instead, she only wondered what he'd do next. If you're already leaning in, don't stop now. Hit like, subscribe. Because some stories don't begin with, I love you. They begin with, don't move. The needle broke again. Third time that week. Clara Evans stared at the jagged point in her fingers, blood blooming from her thumb like a protest. The thread, a soft ivory silk, drooped lifelessly from the frayed end. She didn't flinch. She never did anymore. Outside, the wind had picked up, hissing through the edges of the display window like it, too, wanted inside. The fading Vermont light pooled over the half-finished wedding gown on the mannequin, casting long shadows across the creaky floorboards of her mother's shop. This dress had been her mother's final project. Clara hadn't dared touch it for months, not until the notice came. She looked again at the yellow envelope on the corner of the work table, already torn open. The words, "Final Warning," stamped in red across the top, still made her stomach twist. The shop, the upstairs apartment, everything her mother had built, gone in 9 days. And still, the gown wasn't finished. In the back room, her little brother coughed, dry, hard, and fast. Clara's hand twitched. The inhaler was nearly empty. There would be no refill until she found $96.23. She wiped her thumb on her apron, threaded a new needle, and kept sewing. Her stitches were straight. Her breath wasn't. The bell above the front door jingled, sharp and unexpected. No one ever came this late. Clara looked up without standing. He stepped inside like he owned the place. Tall, dressed in charcoal wool and leather gloves. The man closed the door behind him without a word. His eyes, dark, distant but unflinching, scanned the shop like it was a painting he'd seen before but didn't remember liking. Clara blinked. "We're closed." He didn't answer, just walked forward, straight to the gown. For a moment, he stared at it, not like a customer, like a man at a grave. He lifted one gloved hand, brushed the unfinished hem with the back of his knuckles. Then he turned to her. "Did your mother make this?" Clara straightened. "Yes." "Eleanor Evans," he said softly, more to himself. "She made a dress for my grandmother, years ago." Clara nodded. "The one with the blue tulip lining." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She never wore it." Silence settled, between them like snow. Clara didn't ask why. People rarely did when it came to unworn dresses and old women. He looked around the shop again. "You're losing this place." She exhaled, slow. "Yes." His gaze landed back on the gown. "Do you want to keep it?" Her throat burned. "It's not about want." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thin leather folder. He placed it on the table between them, careful not to touch the needle she'd dropped. "This is a contract," he said. "You sign it. I'll pay off the shop's debt, take care of your brother's medical bills, and ensure you never worry about money again. In exchange..." He paused. Clara's chest went tight. "In exchange for what?" "You'll marry me. For 6 months." The air left her lungs like a punch. "What kind of arrangement is this?" He didn't flinch. "One that solves both our problems." Clara stepped back. "Why me?" He watched her carefully. "Because you didn't ask. You didn't beg. You just kept sewing." Her mouth opened, closed. "This is insane." "Maybe," he said, voice calm. "But it's real." Clara turned to the gown, touched the bodice lightly, fingertips grazing the delicate lace her mother had stitched by hand. She thought of the little cough from the back room, the unpaid electricity bill, the eviction notice, the empty fridge. The promise she made, standing at her mother's casket. "I'll keep the light on. I'll keep us alive." And this man, this stranger with ice in his voice and shadows in his eyes, was offering her oxygen. Do you expect me to sleep with you? She asked quietly. He hesitated. His jaw flexed. No, he said. Not unless you choose to. She looked at him then. Really looked. Cold. Beautiful. Haunted. Something inside her twisted. He pushed the contract forward. The wedding is Friday. You can wear that dress. Clara didn't pick up the pen. She picked up the broken needle, set it gently beside the silk, and signed her name. Not for the man, not for the money, for the boy coughing in the back room. For her mother's legacy. For the walls that still smelled like pressed linen and lavender and dreams. James Hawthorne folded the contract neatly, slid it back into the folder, and nodded once. Then, before walking out, he turned and said, You should finish the gown. You won't want to be late. The courthouse smelled like lemon cleaner and wet wool. Clara sat still on the bench outside room 3B, the satin of her dress whispering against her knees every time she shifted. It wasn't a bridal gown, not the one she'd stayed up all night. Finishing, but a simple cream shift dress, borrowed shoes, and the pearl earrings her mother once wore to church. It wasn't a wedding. It was a transaction. James Hawthorne stood 10 feet away, speaking in low tones to his lawyer. His suit was charcoal again, tailored within an inch of his life. His tie was black, not navy, not gray. Black, as if he were attending a funeral, instead of a marriage. He hadn't looked at her once since they arrived. The clerk called them in. Clara's stomach flipped. Inside, the room was bright in that artificial, humming light way that made everyone look slightly unreal. A judge sat behind a podium, bored already, flipping through a slim folder. 2 witnesses stood in the corner, strangers James had hired to nod and disappear. There were no flowers, no music, no audience. The judge didn't ask, Do you take this man? She didn't say, With this ring. She simply said, Sign here. Clara signed. James did too. There was no kiss, just the soft scrape of his chair as he stood and said, without looking at her, We'll take separate cars. So that's it, Clara thought. I'm a wife now. The ride to his estate was silent. Her stomach coiled into itself. When her car pulled, through the wrought iron gates and curved along the long gravel path, she saw the house. No, mansion, for the first time. Stone. Slate. Glass. Power-made architecture. A butler opened the door before she even knocked. Mrs. Hawthorne, he said with a respectful nod that felt like a joke. She mumbled something back and followed him through the hall of shadows and amber lights. The house smelled of cedarwood and aged scotch. The floors gleamed dark like obsidian. Fireplaces flickered in rooms she didn't dare glance into. On the wall hung a massive oil portrait of a woman with a distant smile and hard cheekbones. She looked like she hadn't laughed in 20 years. This way, ma'am. He led her up a wide staircase and down a long hall of closed doors. At the end, he opened one. This is your room. Clara stepped in. It was larger than her entire apartment. Bay windows overlooked pine trees and fading light. A 4-poster bed stood in the center, wrapped in ivory linens. There were fresh towels, lavender soap, a closet already filled with clothing she hadn't picked. She turned. Where does Mr. Hawthorne sleep? The butler hesitated. The other wing. The words landed with a quiet thud. Of course. Different. Wings. Different lives. Just like he promised. Still, she waited until the door closed before she sat down, then collapsed backward into the mattress, hands splayed. She was married, and entirely, utterly alone. It was after 10 p.m. when she heard the knock, soft, intentional. She sat up, her heart flicked in her ribs. The door creaked open. James. He didn't step in, just stood at the threshold in a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled, collar open, no tie. His eyes swept the room, then settled on her. Unreadable. I wanted to check if everything was acceptable. She nodded. It's fine. He didn't move. Your brother? He asked after a pause. She blinked. What? I wired money this morning. The pharmacy should have filled the prescription. Clara's mouth went dry. Thank you. He gave a small nod. A beat passed. The air between them charged with something sharp and restless. You can sleep peacefully here, he said. Will I? His jaw tightened. I don't intend to make this harder than it has to be. She stood. Then why are you here? Another pause, one long enough for her breath to catch. I don't know, he said honestly. Clara walked toward him, barefoot on the cool floor. She stopped just out of reach. You didn't look at me today. Not once. I did, he said. When you weren't watching. She stared at him, eyes unblinking. What do you see? His throat moved. He didn't answer. She didn't wait for one. I'm not a debt, she said. I'm not a favor or a cause or a memory. James looked at her then, hard. I know, but the way he said it, low, strained, almost angry, sounded like a man arguing with himself. He turned to leave, then stopped. His hand rested on the doorframe, knuckles white. Don't wear that dress tomorrow, Clara frowned. Why? He glanced, over his shoulder. Because it makes me want to forget the rules I set. Then he walked away, and the door clicked shut behind him. The next morning, Clara woke to the scent of lavender and something heavier. Cedarwood, sharp and dark, like a forest after rain. It was faint but steady, clinging to the linen, the curtains, even her skin. The sheets were untouched. She hadn't moved much. Sleep had come and gone like a stranger in a storm, just long enough to remind her what she'd lost. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows in broken stripes. The cold outside pressed faintly against the panes, but the room was warm too. Warm. Overheated, like it didn't know how to feel right. She padded into the bathroom, washed her face in silence, then stepped into the closet. It was already full. Everything fit her perfectly. Cream blouses, soft wool skirts, cotton dresses, with subtle seams and price tags still attached. Even underthings, simple, expensive, no lace, no silk. Every item whispered control. She chose the plainest outfit she could find. Downstairs, the house unfolded like a cathedral of solitude. Dark paneling, art that didn't smile, hallways that echoed back only her own breathing. She found the kitchen, by accident. It was empty except for a loaf of fresh bread, still warm, and a note. Eat. Then go where you wish. Jay. Go where she wished. In this house? This house wasn't built for wandering. It was made to hold power. And whoever James Hawthorne was when no one watched. Clara sliced a piece of bread, poured herself coffee, and stood at the window. Beyond the glass, pine trees thick as soldiers, fog curling around their trunks like ghosts not yet ready to leave. A hawk circled, slow and high, waiting for something smaller to fall. She didn't stay long. By noon, Clara had walked most of the West Wing, bedrooms locked, art halls lined with faces she didn't recognize. At the far end, behind a closed French door, she found a library. It was dim, lit by natural light leaking through a stained glass skylight. Books lined the walls like armor, leather-bound, old, some in languages she couldn't read. A decanter of amber whiskey sat on a polished bar cart near the fireplace, and James was there. He stood with his back to her, sleeves rolled again, his white shirt faintly wrinkled from tension. One hand rested on the mantel, the other held a glass, half full. He didn't turn. Mrs. Hawthorne, he said quietly. I wasn't looking for you, she replied. I know. He took a sip. You found me anyway. Clara stepped into the room. The fire crackled. A log split with a sudden pop. She moved toward a worn leather armchair and sank into it, her legs drawn up under her. The silence between them wasn't empty. It pulsed, measured, aware, complicated. She watched him. "You don't like to be seen, do you?" she said softly. "I like control," he replied. "That's not the same thing." His jaw flexed. She let her fingers trace the stitching on the chair's armrest. What happened to the woman in the painting? A pause. Then, "She died," I figured. But who was she? James turned then. Slowly. "My mother." Clara nodded once. She looked lonely. She was. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, James looked so human it nearly undid her. "I thought you'd stay upstairs all day," he said, shifting the moment. "I'm not porcelain." "No," he said. "You're not." He crossed to the bar cart, poured a second glass, held it out. "To her?" Clara hesitated, then took it. The whiskey was warm, biting, smoother than expected. It burned a little going down, but the heat was oddly comforting. She set the glass down. "You didn't marry me to save a shop." James didn't answer. "You didn't even care about the dress," she added. His voice was quieter now. "I cared that you didn't beg." She looked at him sharply. "I've seen desperation," he said. "You had something else. Defiance. Dignity. You were drowning, but you didn't flail. You just kept sewing." Clara blinked. The words landed harder than she'd expected. "I wasn't trying to impress you." "You didn't." His gaze softened slightly. "That's why you stayed in my head." Something shifted in the room. Not loud, not fast, but real. She picked up the glass again. "So what now?" He walked to the window, pulled the curtain back slightly. "You live here. You breathe. You eat. I pay for everything. In 6 months, if you still hate me, I'll sign the annulment." "And if I don't?" James turned back. "I won't ask you to love me. I just need you to exist beside me. Quietly. Honestly." Clara stood slowly. The room suddenly felt too small. "You didn't want a wife," she said. "No," he said. "I wanted someone real." She stared at him for a long moment. Then, without another word, walked out of the room. The whiskey still burned in her chest. That night in her bedroom, she couldn't sleep again. The silence was thick as velvet. But it wasn't fear keeping her awake. It was him. Somewhere in that enormous house, he was awake too. She could feel it, like the faint thrum of electricity in a room just before lightning strikes. And when she rose, barefoot, crossed the hall to the French doors, and looked down from the balcony, she saw him in the library, still standing by, the fire, staring into it like it might blink first. She didn't call his name, but she didn't look away. The hallway was darker than usual. Midnight stretched outside the windows like velvet, and the lights in Clara's bedroom had long been turned off. She lay still under the heavy blankets, staring at the ceiling, pulse too quick for sleep. She heard it before she saw him. The slow, deliberate creak of her door handle turning. A soft click. A hush that fell over the room like a warning. Then, James stepped inside. No jacket. White dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled halfway, barefoot. His eyes locked on hers. He didn't ask. He closed the door behind him, walked to the side of her bed, and stood there, breathing steady, but harder than usual. She could feel the heat of him through the air between them. Clara sat up slowly, her breath caught halfway between protest and expectation. "You said 6 months," she whispered. His voice was low, gravel and restraint. "I know what I said." Her heart thudded once, loud and deep. James leaned down, one hand bracing the headboard, the other hovering near her shoulder, close enough for her to feel the weight of it, the intention. "I told myself I'd wait until it made sense," he murmured. "Until the vows meant something. But tonight, his voice broke slightly. My hands came first. He touched her, palm on shoulder. Warm, firm, not asking, not demanding. Clara inhaled sharply. Her instinct screamed to back away, but she didn't. She didn't move at all. His fingers slid down her arm slowly, brushing over the thin cotton of her nightgown. Her skin burned underneath. She exhaled shakily, torn between fear and something far more dangerous. Want. James sat beside her now, hands on her waist. She looked into his face and saw everything. Hunger, pain, restraint. He wasn't cold. He wasn't calculating. He was lost. So was she. When he leaned in, lips brushing her neck, not roughly but like a man starved, her head tilted without command. He kissed just below her ear, his breath searing against her pulse. "Tell me no," he murmured. Clara couldn't. Her fingers clutched the front of his shirt, knuckles white. He took it as permission. Suddenly, she was under him, pinned gently to the bed, his mouth claiming hers. No ceremony, no careful choreography. Just heat. His kiss was firm, possessive, and relentless. Her body tensed, then opened. He tasted like whiskey and something unspoken. His hands roamed, over her hips, down her thighs, then back up, fingers hooking into the hem of her nightgown. She gasped when the fabric lifted past her waist, and he paused, eyes on hers. She didn't speak. He kept going. The cotton peeled away like a second skin. The cool air hit her first, then the weight of his stare. He looked at her like a man seeing fire for the first time. "You're beautiful," he said, as if it surprised him. Clara swallowed hard. Then he kissed her again. Deeper, more desperate. One hand slid under her lower back, pulling her to him. She felt every inch of him. Hard, focused, shaking slightly from restraint. He pushed his shirt off, dropped it carelessly on the floor. His chest was lean, sculpted, the kind of body built from tension, not vanity. She reached up and touched. Him, slowly, palm over his heartbeat. It was racing. He caught her hand, kissed her fingertips. Then he entered her. There was no warning, just pressure. Then stretch. Then pain. Clara gasped. Her nails bit into his shoulders. He froze instantly, eyes wide, breath cut. "You've never—" He started, stunned. "No," she whispered, voice trembling. "I haven't." James looked down at her like he'd made a terrible mistake. He started to pull back, but she stopped him. Her hands cupped his face, fingers trembling. "Don't stop." He held still for a long second, his forehead pressed against hers. Then, slowly, he moved again, this time gentler, steadier. Every thrust was deep, slow, careful. And still she burned. Still she cried out, softly at first, then louder, until her legs wrapped around him like instinct, her body catching. Up to something primal and long denied. She had never known she could feel like this. Not just stretched and filled, but seen. James murmured her name against her mouth, again and again, like it meant something holy. She let go. Her body arched into his, breath ragged, hands clawing at his back. The heat crested, broke. She cried out. He followed seconds later, his entire frame trembling as he buried himself in her one last time, jaw clenched, breath gone. He collapsed beside her, chest rising in, shudders, hand still gripping her waist as if she might vanish. Silence fell. Real silence. Not the heavy kind from earlier. This was the kind that came after a storm. Clara turned to him, resting her cheek on his chest. Neither of them spoke. Until, "You should have told me," he said softly. "I didn't want you to stop." His arms tightened around her. "I don't want to break you." he whispered. You didn't, she said. You made me feel real. The bed was empty when Clara opened her eyes. The sheets beside her were still warm, faintly wrinkled, pressed with the outline of his body, but he was gone. No sound, no breath but hers. She sat up slowly. Her thighs ached. Between them she felt the dull burn of change. Not pain, just evidence. That what happened wasn't a dream. The sun was up, light pouring through the curtains in thick gold slats. Dust swirled in the beams, catching the silence like static. She reached for her robe, pulled it around her, and sat still. Not crying. Not smiling, just processing. His scent was still on her skin. Cedar, heat, and something darker. Something male. The ache in her chest wasn't fear, it was confusion. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. Last night had been a line crossed. She'd expected guilt, regret, shame. Instead, she felt wanted, and that terrified her. She found the kitchen by scent alone, coffee, fresh toast, and something savory in a skillet. The butler was gone. In his place, James stood barefoot by the stove, wearing a gray t-shirt and navy sweatpants. He looked like someone else. Younger. Real. Clara froze in the doorway. James turned slowly. Their eyes met, but he didn't smile. Good morning, he said, tone unreadable. Clara stepped in, fingers curling into the sleeves of her robe. You cook? He flipped an egg. Sometimes. For wives. That stopped him. His back straightened. He turned off the burner, set the spatula down, then looked at her. Fully, finally. No, he said. Not for wives. The air stretched thin between them. Clara sat at the edge of the island stool. The plate in front of her had toast, scrambled eggs, and sliced apple. James poured her coffee without asking how she took it. She didn't correct him. They ate in silence for 4 minutes and 23 seconds. Then Clara set her fork down. I need to say something. James kept eating. She tried again. Last night, I didn't expect it. I didn't plan it, but I didn't hate it. He glanced at her, expression unreadable. She kept going. That's what scares me. James leaned, back, arms crossed. You think I manipulated you? Clara blinked. I didn't, he added. I know, she said quickly. That's the problem. If you were cruel, cold, transactional, then at least I could hate you. But you weren't. You were human. His jaw ticked. Is that a flaw? No, she whispered. It's dangerous. James stood, picked up her plate, and moved to the sink. He didn't speak again until the water ran and shut off. I didn't mean for it to happen last night, he said finally. I believe you. He dried his hands, turned to her. But I don't regret it. She swallowed hard. Neither do I. Silence again, but this one wasn't tense. It was exposed, unmasked. James exhaled, then stepped closer. I know what this looks like, he said. You signed something. I paid debts. Then I touched you. It wasn't that simple. I know. He met her eyes. But you're allowed to doubt me. Clara stared at him. And you? Do you doubt me? No, he said. I fear you. She blinked. Why? Because you're not what I planned. Later that afternoon, Clara went to the library. She didn't expect to cry. But as she stood by the bookshelves, fingers grazing the spine of a novel her mother once loved, it hit her. The moment. The reality. The fall. She wasn't the girl who fixed hymns and kept quiet anymore. She wasn't untouched. She wasn't safe from herself. Tears came without warning. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just quiet, relentless, and honest. She sat on the old leather chair where he first poured her whiskey. The same spot where everything began shifting. and she let herself cry. Not because she regretted what happened, but because it changed her. That night, James didn't come to her room, and she didn't go to his. But she didn't sleep either. She lay awake, fingers tracing the curve of her collarbone, remembering his breath there, his hands, his weight. It wasn't about lust. It was the way he looked at her, as if she'd stepped out of a dream he hadn't let himself have, as if she was realer than anything in his world of glass, stone, and silence. She turned toward the door, waiting to hear his footsteps. They never came. At 2:17 a.m., she slipped from bed, walked barefoot to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water. The house was asleep, but he wasn't. James stood in the library again, this time in full darkness, staring at the fire that hadn't yet died out. The orange light licked across his face like candlelight in confession. He didn't see her. She didn't interrupt. She just stood there, hand on the wall, pulse unsteady, because she realized something. He hadn't touched her to own her. He'd touched her to remember he was alive, and she had let him, for the same reason. It started with silence, longer than usual, thicker. James stopped appearing at breakfast. His bedroom door stayed closed. The library, once dimly lit by firelight and whiskey, remained dark every night Clara passed. He had retreated, and Clara didn't know why. She waited 2 days, then 3, but on the 4th morning, she found a legal envelope on the hallway table, her name handwritten. Inside, a document terminating the marriage contract, effective immediately, with a generous financial settlement. No note. No explanation. Just silence signed in ink. Clara stood frozen in the hall, lips parted, lungs still. She wasn't surprised. She was furious. She found him in his office, seated behind a desk the size of a dining table. He didn't look up when she entered. "You're just ending it?" James didn't flinch. "You've been paid. You're free to go." "I don't want to be paid." He looked up at that. Just once. Then away again. "You didn't ask for this." "Neither did I." "That didn't stop you before." His jaw tightened. "You touched me," she said, stepping closer, voice shaking. "You looked at me like I was the only thing left in your world, and now you're pretending I never happened. You deserve better than this house. Than me." She laughed, sharp and humorless. "You don't get to decide what I deserve." James stood abruptly, papers scattering. His voice, when it came, was too calm. "Don't mistake last week for love, Clara. I didn't," she said. "But you did." He froze. The storm outside cracked open. Thunder rolled low and mean. Clara moved to the window. Rain had started, blurring the glass like a memory smudging itself out. "You think pushing me away protects me," she whispered, "but it's cowardice. I've lost someone before. You didn't lose me." "You will," he said, voice low, raw. "Everyone does." She turned, walked straight to the front door, pulled it open. Rain poured like judgment, cold and merciless. She stepped into it without looking back. Behind her, footsteps. Then, his voice. "Clara." She kept walking, barefoot, shivering, angry. He caught her in the gravel driveway, hand closing around, her wrist spinning her back to him. Rain drenched them both in seconds. "You can't just leave," he snapped. "I thought that was your plan. I didn't mean it like this." She jerked away. "Then what did you mean?" James stared at her. Water streamed down his face. His shirt clung to him, molding to every line of tension. "You were supposed to be temporary," he said. "But then I started breathing again." She shook her head. "That's not love. That's survival." "It's all I know." She stepped closer, lips trembling. "Then learn something new." The rain pounded between them. He dropped to his knees, right there in the mud and rain. His hands gripped her waist, forehead pressed to her stomach. I don't know how to love someone who could leave. Clara's breath caught. Her fingers moved to his wet hair, holding him. I don't know how to love someone who keeps trying to leave me, she whispered. He looked up at her then. The thunder stopped. For a moment, there was just them, drenched, ruined, real. He stood, slowly, then pulled her to him like he was drowning and she was the shore. Their lips met. Not hungry this time. Not lust. Need. Connection. Confession. She melted into him, arms around his neck, fingers tangling in the back of his wet shirt. The kiss deepened, stole her breath, gave it back, then stole it again. They stood there in the storm until the rain couldn't touch them anymore. Later, wrapped in towels and silence, they sat in front of the fireplace. His fingers brushed hers. Tentative. Testing. She let him. I'm afraid of what you make me feel, he said. I'm afraid I want it too much, she replied. He looked at her. You're not something I bought, Clara. She smiled faintly. No, I'm something you almost lost. His eyes closed for a second, then reopened. Don't let me. I won't, she whispered. But you have to stay too. He nodded, and in that quiet, something shifted again. Not because they kissed in the rain, not because one of them broke, but because both did. Together. The next morning, sunlight poured into the house like forgiveness. Clara woke wrapped in warmth, blankets tangled. At her feet, a soft cotton shirt against her skin, and James's arm heavy around her waist. His breath was slow and steady at the back of her neck. No lies between them. No ink. No contract. Just the hum of two hearts finally resting in the same rhythm. She didn't move. Didn't want to break the spell. Not yet. When she finally stirred, James opened his eyes. Still half asleep, still unguarded. Good morning, she whispered. He blinked slowly. You stayed. You didn't give me a reason to run. He kissed her shoulder. No urgency. Just presence. I keep expecting you to vanish, he admitted. Clara rolled to face him. And I keep expecting you to shut down again. I'm trying not to, he said. Trying to stay open, even when it feels like bleeding. She touched his face. Then bleed with me. They ate breakfast in the kitchen, still barefoot, still in stolen clothes and quiet looks. He cooked again, eggs, toast, black coffee, and she didn't question it this time. Halfway through, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a velvet box. Clara tensed. It's not a ring, he said. He opened it. Inside, a gold thimble, simple, etched with vines, elegant in its own way. It belonged to my grandmother, he said. She never sewed a thing in her life. But she wore it on a chain every day because it reminded her of who she used to be before she married. Clara looked up. She told me once, he continued, that people forget women weren't born wives. They had stories, skills, fire. Clara reached out, fingers brushing the metal. I want you to have it, he said. It's not for show. No, it's for you. Later that day, James disappeared for a few hours. Clara wandered the house, not aimless now, but curious. She noticed things she hadn't before. A faded photo tucked behind books in the library, a pencil sketch of a young woman laughing, a half-written letter in a drawer that simply read, I miss you when it rains. By the time he returned, she was sitting at her sewing machine, the old one. Her mother's. The room smelled of lemon oil and dust. James leaned in the doorway, watching her thread the needle. You're rebuilding, he said. I never stopped. He stepped in, set a wrapped box beside her. This came earlier. She raised an eyebrow. What is it? Open it. Inside, A bolt of ivory silk. Imported. Soft as breath. Clara's lips parted. This is expensive. James shrugged. It's for a dress. What kind of dress? The one you'll wear when we marry. She turned slowly. We're already married. Not really, he said. Not in any way that matters. Her breath caught. What are you saying? I want to do it again, he said. This time with vows. Real ones. She stood. And what would you vow? He walked to her, took her hands in his. I'd vow not to disappear when things get hard. To stop thinking you'll leave the moment I let my guard down. I'd vow to learn you, your silences, your soft spots, your fire, and to protect all of them. Tears welled in her eyes. She squeezed his fingers. Then I'd vow to call you out when you retreat, to remind you you're not a ghost, that you're here, alive, wanted. James kissed her then, slow, firm, like a signature sealed in heat. A week later, the ceremony was held on the property, just a clearing between trees, simple chairs, a table of food, her brother in a navy suit, still sniffling but smiling. The butler clapped once. That was enough. Clara wore the dress she made from the silk. No veil, no heels, no bouquet, just her and James. He wore a vest instead of a jacket, no tie, his hair messy from the wind. He looked more real than she'd ever seen him. The vows were spoken without paper. They didn't shake, didn't stall. Clara said, "You're not the man I signed for. You're better." James replied, "You're not mine by contract anymore. You're mine because you chose me." They kissed under bare branches and cloudless sky. No storm. Just light. That night, back in the house, Clara sat at the foot of their shared bed, the thimble hanging from her neck. James sat behind her, brushing her hair back, pressing a kiss to the nape of her neck. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm happy," she replied. "I'll try not to ruin it." "You will," she said. "We both will. And then we'll fix it. Together." James rested his chin on her shoulder. "You've changed me," she smiled. "You were always changing. I just gave you a mirror." The shop reopened on a Saturday. It had a new name now, Clara's Light. Simple letters carved into reclaimed wood, stained dark, bolted above the door by James himself. The inside wasn't all that different. The sewing tables were the same. So were the uneven floorboards, and the bell above the door that still rang twice when pushed too hard. But now, sunlight poured in from new windows. The ceiling fan spun like it was proud to be alive. And the walls, once gray with time, were soft cream, warm as breath. It didn't smell like grief anymore. It smelled like fresh linen, coffee, and the start of something earned. Clara stood behind the counter, chalk dust on her fingers, a pin tucked behind her ear. She was measuring a client when James walked in. No one else would have noticed him. He didn't make entrances. He didn't smile big or speak loud, but Clara saw him like always, like the only person in a room of breathing bodies. He waited until she finished, then leaned against the doorframe. "You're early," she said. "You're beautiful," he replied. She blushed even now. "That's not an answer." He stepped closer. "That's the only one that matters." They walked home together. Not in silence, never again, but in the kind of quiet shared by people who no longer fear what might not be said. Her hand was tucked in his coat pocket. His fingers played with the ring she still didn't wear, because she didn't need to. At the doorstep, she paused, looked up at him. "You ever wonder how it would have gone if we met different?" James thought for a moment. No contract, no debt, no grief, just two people walking into the same bookstore on the same rainy day. Something like that. He smiled. "I wouldn't have known what to do with you." "You didn't back then either." "True," he admitted, But this time, I'd have bought you coffee. And said what? He looked at her, eyes steady. I'd have said, don't run. I think you're about to matter to me. Later, tangled in sheets that no longer held shame, Clara lay with her back to his chest. His arm curled under her ribs, her foot hooked over his calf. He wasn't a shadow anymore. He was weight, warmth, safety, and she wasn't a transaction, a signature, a body. She was home. James kissed the back of her shoulder. Do you still feel like I bought you? No, she said. I feel like I made you earn me. He chuckled softly. I did. Every second. They lay there for a while, the fire cracking low. Clara turned, her hand pressed to his chest, fingers lightly grazing his collarbone. What scared you most? He didn't pretend not to understand. Letting someone see me. After so long, pretending I was already gone. She nodded. I saw you the first day. No, he said. You saw through me. She rested her head just below his chin. His hand cradled her skull like she was something holy. I used to think the world wanted too much from me, she said quietly. But really, I was the one who wouldn't let it give. James pulled her closer. We're not those people, anymore. No, she said. We're better. At dawn, she woke first. Not because she had to. Just because the stillness felt good. She got out of bed, barefoot on the wood floor, wrapped herself in one of his shirts, walked down the hall toward the window seat overlooking the trees. Outside, the pines were dusted with frost. A hawk cut across the sky. Behind her, the floor creaked. She turned. James. He looked half asleep, hair messy, eyes soft. You're up early, he murmured. So are you. He walked to her, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I had a dream. Good or bad? He hesitated. Real. You weren't wearing white. We didn't say vows. But you looked at me like I was yours. I do. He kissed her temple. Forever? She nodded. Forever. They stood in the quiet, the house breathing with them. He slid his arm around her waist, hand resting just beneath her ribs. I never said it, he murmured. Said what? James looked at her. No armor. No doubt. I love you. Clara smiled. Not surprised, not shaken, just certain. I know. If this story moved you, even just a little, leave a like to let it be known. And if you want more stories that stay with you long after the last line, hit subscribe and stay close. We're just getting started.